Okay, I'm actually editing a video. I was just discussing this today with my Patreon supporters in our group chat, and I was discussing how everything is indicating that the old world had trains everywhere. All the grand buildings we see would have been hubs, and there were lots and lots of hubs. So many that we would demolish many of them. Not we, but the inheritors. Trains, trains, train. And I've proposed that old roads were actually train lines in the old world, similar to Olaf Jensen's stories and explorations of the North Pole, advanced train lines. And really we usually discuss buildings, but what about the roads? And the roads are more fascinating and impossible in a horse and wagon time. Here you can just get an idea of how much dirt would be required just for this little quarter-mile section that we're looking at. How much dirt. And in fact, I'm editing a part in my video for what will be last week's video. And you can see this abandoned train line, and very small compared to what I was just showing. And the tracks have been removed, and we have these everywhere. And this little piece of road is a great example on the impossibility of building these roads, even building the train lines, canals, and everything we've inherited. And this brings me to another point. Here we can see this piece of road again, how built up it is. And if we continue up here a little bit, we'll see like a turnaround point. And it actually looks like there's another road that used to go along this train line. And then we see this turnaround point, and let's look at it from a different angle. Here we go. So you can see old lines. You see an old turnaround point for a train right here. And this is in my backyard. And when I first moved out here, there was actually train tracks going across the highway. And here I've changed the date to 2006 so we could see these train tracks. And I loved it. I always wondered, even before I did this research. And today I understand what it is. This was indeed an old train line, and this was a turnaround point going back over the main track, a circle. And one day they removed it, and you can see now it's gone. But you can still see the turnaround point, now almost obscure. And in fact, along this whole stretch, along this highway, you can follow this train line, and you can see the old one next to it on both sides of the highway. Can you see that? So anyway, another good example is this place that was shared also in that Patreon chat by Roxana. And this, I believe, is the same thing. Today, this is a cemetery. Old world, beautiful building. Could have been a state capitol or courthouse or anything. And it's a cemetery. And here, I think the same thing is going on. In fact, I'll take you there real quick. And it's located in Italy. And here we go. The cemetery. Let's change the date to modern. Here we can see the beautiful, beautiful building. And what is it? And to me, that's exactly what it is. If these old roads were actually train lines, then this road would come up this way, and this building would be a train terminal. And here it would come up, it would go around this roundabout here, stop in front of the terminal, and then it would continue. And in fact, we see another turnaround point that is now today the cemetery, and you can see the path it would have taken as it winds up and out of these hills. So not originally meant to be a cemetery, originally a grand, unneeded train hub. And this one is amazing because it goes through the mountains, through tunnels everywhere. And you have these grand aqueducts that I believe are also smaller monorail type rail lines, more designed for local travel. So that's it. Back to editing my video. I just wanted to share that. I thank you for being here this week. I love you all. God bless and welcome. Okay, I shouldn't be recording right now. I should be working on this video. I think I have ADD, but maybe that's a good thing. I'm totally distracted. At this point in the video, I'm talking about Africa, and there's so much. I'm looking at this map, and parts that I didn't talk about in the video. I'm upset with myself. Perhaps some of you do this. Not even listening to my video, just looking at this map and entertaining other thoughts. And that's okay if you do that. I do too. And here my mind is wandering off in Africa, in other parts that I didn't discuss in the video. And what I couldn't help but notice while looking at these maps, this one already is different. Again, it's Ortelius, the date is 1570, and I was struggling to find any pyramid in 1570. Of course, when I was making that last video, I was thinking about all these rivers and lakes, many that no longer exist. Of course, all the castle cities, but surely these map makers would have documented some pyramids here in Egypt, along the Nile. I'm not pleased with the resolution of this one, but no at least obvious pyramids, tons of castle cities. Nor in this one. Castle cities going all the way up to Damascus. Damascus is a castle city. Jerusalem here, castle city. No pyramids. Are the pyramids much more recent of a creation than we are told? I'm only asking the question. Here's a crusty Ortelius map in 1603. Very crusty. We can see that you could travel across the southern part of the continent. Perhaps this was that lake. Super fascinating. Here again, Jerusalem, castle city, castle, and no pyramids. Here we can see Barbaria, Sierra Leone. But what a mystery, really. Here again, Ortelius, focusing on the eastern half, showing many more castle cities, able to add more detail to this map. And how about a pyramid? Alexandria, here, and Cairo. We see the castle city of Suez right here, but we don't see a Suez Canal. Interesting. Again, Jerusalem, Mecca over here, castle city, and no pyramid. Again, was Ortelius a fool? Or are the pyramids not as old as we've been led to believe? Many of these castle cities may or may not exist, but what is clear is these old maps clearly seem to have more and more removed as time goes on. So let's take a pause. Next, I want to look at African castles. Of course, in the last video, we discussed this map from 1570, a map by Ortelius, and I think history is whatever people think it is. I mean, whatever you think of when you think of Africa is what history is to you. Lions, tigers, men in loincloth with spears, pyramid, desert, dry. But really, this was a totally different Africa. From what I can tell, it's not even called Africa. But I digress. What about these castles? Beautiful castles is not usually attributed to our idea of Africa. So I thought we'd have a look at some. This is called the Cairo Saladin Citadel. Maybe it belonged to Aladdin, the genie. In Cairo, this definitely fits the castle bill. Here we see Cairo, and here we see a castle. Could this be it? It certainly is worthy of being placed on a map. We see the blocks that it's built of. We're told it was built in 1207. So here is a chamber on the inside. We see some kind of date. J something 7. Pretty remarkable seamless construction here. And there's so much more to it. Looks like they just keep excavating. Looks like you have brick and block, all kinds of materials here. Here again, an aqueduct. These may be train lines or small trains. Here we can see the ruins, or a sketch of them, before it was demolished. The ruins of Great Iwan. Again, Africa, and truly in ruins, but absolutely remarkable craftsmanship. Cathedral style right here. Pretty unbelievable. Tower, built in the 1500s, shortly after the map. And this is all Cairo. Old Cairo. Again, most people would think pyramids. Pyramids are non-existent on this map. Only castles. And here, we have a castle. Here she is in 1955, looking more complete everywhere. And all this was just Cairo. Here's another one. Old Cairo in Africa. And here we have another castle in Alexandria, Egypt. Again, most people, what do you think of when you think of Alexandria? We're thinking pyramid. We're not thinking cannons. Really melted down here. And castles. No, unbelievable here. Brown sign. I'm sure they have their own version of the clampers in Africa. And here a depiction in 1780. So this whole thing is built out in the water. How about Ethiopia? Here we go. What do you think when you think of Ethiopia? Now this looks like the ruins we explored in my last video. The wall of Great Zimbabwe or whatever. The ruins. And here we can see the same type of super construction. It has all kinds of buildings. Just a party. Here's the Royal Library. This is all so old. Again, I believe it's what we're seeing on this map. Where is Ethiopia? Down here. No doubt one of these castles. And Ghana. Tons of castles. Old depictions. Old star fort drawings. One after another. Here's the front of one of these forts today. And just repurposed. I mean, the cheapest signs ever. Like this is supposed to be original. Come on. Here we go. What's hiding in the jungles of Africa? And everything looking pristine. Drawings, no jungles, Fort Nassau. And it's all just sitting here. I mean, the evidence, the truth about old Africa, it's hidden. Star forts everywhere. And this is one piece of evidence that supports this idea when we look at these old maps. Here we go. It's not like we have to second guess ourselves. We have all this history left over. I mean, are we to believe these were the present day African castles and everything just went backward? So many depictions. And what do we see today? That will be a deeper part of this exploration. What actually exists today? Again, if you didn't watch my last video, with what's left of Fort Great Zimbabwe, now National Park, then you'll have a clue. I mean, if you watch that video, you'll have a clue as to what is left of these castle cities. There's much more. Here's Kenya. I love Kenyan coffee. I love all African coffee. And here we are in Kenya, Mombasa. What's this fort called, you ask? Fort Jesus. Good old Fort Jesus was built, here we go, between 1593 and 96. 3-year fort here. Fort Massive Jesus. Unbelievable. Kenya. Here's a star fort out in the water in Mozambique. Just the walls left. Here in Namibia. Castle. It was built in 1909. So very late. Not looking as impressive as Fort Jesus. But nonetheless, 1909 they tell us. How about Nigeria? Again, jog your mind here. What do you think of when you think of Nigeria? Now this old map is really beginning to make sense. And again, it's nothing unusual, really. We see the same thing in every nation. Castle cities throughout the realm depicted on old maps. And then when we actually look for ourselves, when we don't just swallow the official narrative, it all does line up. And really just walls left. Very complex walls. Walls and towers, but just a husk of what things clearly were in the past. So let's take a pause. Okay, in this segment I want to share some more clues from the past. In the past, somebody was very interested in documenting everything. Map making and drawings. This was shared by Heidi in one of our Zoom chat, and it's so mind-blowing, this mole's map collection. More than could ever be explained in school, and yet this is our true history. And I took a little screen recording of what Heidi was sharing that day, and I'm glad I did because it would be impossible to find right now. And all these depictions of essentially components of the old world, like someone was trying to make sense of it all. Here you can see side cutaways of what's underground, all kinds of shafts, and of course castles. And then we see like little wooden ladders, seeming like an afterthought. Here, for example, we see a mountain, and then we see a cutaway showing the inner workings as if it was a building, for it was a mountain. Here again, another castle city, and in the foreground we see a cutout with more little wooden ladders. Over here we see what looks like mountains, but then we see a cutout. And wherever we're seeing these little towers, now we know that it's indicating one of these underground complexes. And we, of course, in this research are discovering that mountains were buildings. And here in the past, somebody was trying to tell us that. Certainly not something that we learned in our schooling. Here again, indicating like a Petra world, chambers. And again, this exists everywhere. We have evidence in North America, but we're told they're Native American carved dwellings. And here we can actually see long ago, in 1751, that these were not just carved. Here even we see brick in ruins, drawn the way they saw it. Columns and complete cutouts of the buildings, now looking like mountains in this time, in the 1700s. And then we see like little wooden bits, ladders and planks, so they could access the different parts. And look up here, just mountains and fields, bushes. Of course, I don't know. How could I? These are my thoughts. So much more in the past. Our whole realm was so much more. Like there wasn't nature. Already in these images, nature has taken over. Bushes, trees growing on the building. And then a primitive people putting little ladders up, hoisting rope, using candles. It almost looks like they're mining, in my opinion. They have little carts, hand carts, and these makeshift ladders, and everything numbered, and everything they're doing is primitive. I mean, again, they're in a mountain building. And even as crude as their drawings are, they're pretty amazing, actually, giving us the clues that we're looking for. Everything I'm discussing right now, made possible by these old map makers. And we can see how the modern people have, at best, repurposed all of this. And most of this will be totally top secret today. Nobody's going in the buildings and strolling around. And nobody's sharing this information with us today. I mean, not on an academic, mainstream level. This is gold. Absolute gold. I could go on and on, but I think I'll just leave it here for today. I thank you for joining me. I love you all. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.